I'm gonna beat you into the living death.
Welcome back to Yelling About Mixed Martial Arts, the show where I yell about mixed martial arts. In the past 2 weeks, we've had two mid-ass UFC cards with two very disappointing main events, and the old-fashioned rug pull done on the next two events on the schedule. I know that might be a lot of twos to multiply in the Marvin Vittori brick skulls most of you dopes have on your shoulders, but it doesn't take an MMA mathematician to calculate the metric ton of shit the month of June has been for the UFC. Starting this descent into sadness was the UFC Fight Night, which took place in Louisville, where the world collectively witnessed one of the finest referees in the sport committing one of the worst early stoppages in recent memory. Referee Jason Herzog called a stop to the action of the aging Jared Cannonier versus the dirty fighting Frenchman Nassourdine Imavov, while Jared Cannonier was still on his feet, and though dazed prior, was by all accounts still very much in the fight at the time. The prevailing theories at the moment are that Herzog may have been drinking beer and smoking cigarettes backstage with Keith Peterson, or that his brain might have gotten sucked into the multiverse, ending up in the same dimension where Johnny Walker was attacking Anthony Smith's family. Aside from the main event's wackiness, Louisville also had a knee-to-liver knockout by Carlos Praetis, a knockout to save the career of Dominic Reyes, and a solid chi-wee-wee from the young stunner Raul Rosas Jr. Last week's Apex card had a triangle armbar finish by Weston Wilson, and not much else. That is until Alex Perez got every ligament in his knee ruptured after Tatsuro Taira rode him around the octagon like a drunk chick playing chicken in the pool of a frat house. The injury slash TKO slash tap out sends Taira into the top 5 at flyweight, and sends Alex Perez into what will likely be a very long layoff. Perhaps the two can run it back somewhere down the line, because there's definitely not going to be any running in the near future of Alex Perez. So that's the two disappointments of UFC past. UFC present sucks dick because it's Tuesday when I'm writing this and I had to watch another episode of The Ultimate Fighter. And UFC future has two cards whose main events got the old switcheroo pulled on them at the last minute, one due to food poisoning and the other due to Conor McGregor. If ever presented with those two options, always choose the food poisoning. By the time that you're probably watching this, we'll have already seen the first of these two switch-ups in Saudi Arabia. A fantastic fight night to be sure, but one that now features Robert Whittaker taking on Ikram Aliskerov instead of Khamzat Chimaev, because Khamzat got the kind of food poisoning that lasts for 2 weeks apparently. Aliskerov was supposed to be fighting on last week's Apex card, but now gets called up in a big way against Rob, while the Saudis get robbed of their intended main event. Considering that they already told the UFC to do better when the card was originally planned, I tend to believe that the Saudi royals are Saudi royally pissed. The bigger and more impactful switcheroo is of course UFC 303, which has gotten all kinds of fucked up over the last week. The main event was pulled, meaning Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler won't be fighting, apparently due to an injury sustained by Conor. Sources allege said injury was to his nose and sustained inside of a nightclub bathroom, but that is unconfirmed. The new main event is Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka 2, which much like The Hangover 2, isn't a sequel anyone really needed, and will likely be an exact retelling of what we saw in the first one. Also due to a long sequence of dumb events, the co-main has been changed to Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez, proving that even the darkest rain clouds have silver linings. Carlos Ulberg, who was supposed to fight Jamal Hill, will now go up against Anthony Smith, except no, apparently that fight has been cancelled too. 303 is a cursed event. Someone has been practicing Santeria. Get your money back and stay away from Las Vegas. Conor says the injury is minor and that the fight is merely postponed as opposed to canceled, and I would tend to believe him. He's never pulled out of a fight before, and I don't think his ego will let him do so even now. I do think the fight will happen, and I want this fight to happen. Not because I care to see it, but because I want it to be fucking over. I am sick and tired of hearing about Conor versus Chandler. I am sick and tired of hearing about Jones versus Stipe. Get this goddamn shit show on the fucking road already. I don't know much about pro wrestling, but I heard Cody Rhodes over there saying something about finishing the story. Well, goddamn it, that couldn't be more applicable to MMA right now. Get these aged, megalomaniac, millionaire pop culture talking points inside of the cage for their swan songs and put these fucking characters to rest. The carcasses of these dead horses need to be gone and buried. It will be one of the happiest days of my life as an MMA fan when I can say with definitive certainty that Conor McGregor and John Jones are gone for good. Until then, the tweets, the Instagram comments, and the unrelenting stupidity continue to pelt us all like a hailstorm that just won't pass. Lastly this week, there's been some talk about the UFC's new gloves being the reason there have been so few knockouts lately. I've seen the stats and the IG reels on the subject, but frankly, I'm not convinced. Dominic Reyes, who has had nothing but problems in his previous 4 fights, got a knockout with the new gloves when he fought Dustin Jacoby in Louisville. I think the new gloves are a convenient excuse when fighters aren't throwing hard enough to actually achieve the KO, but if there is any merit to this concept, we'll definitely find out at UFC 303 if there are enough fights left to actually make that card happen. Until then, I am pressing X to doubt. For yelling about mixed martial arts, this is Thinker St. James reminding you that if you bought tickets to UFC 303, you must be feeling as stupid as Michael Chandler right now.
It's